The whispers followed Bethany Jenkins like a persistent shadow as she approached the white-painted church on the edge of Willow Creek, Colorado. The year was 1876, and her swollen belly spoke volumes about her situation. She kept her head high despite the disapproving glances from townsfolk, who had once greeted her with warm smiles and friendly conversation. Bethany had been a schoolteacher in Willow Creek for 2 years before her husband, Thomas, died in a mining accident 6 months ago, leaving her alone and with child. The timing of her pregnancy had raised eyebrows among the more judgmental members of the community, who calculated the months and drew their own conclusions. As she climbed the steps to the church that Sunday morning in May, Reverend Patterson stood at the entrance, his face a mask of stern disapproval. His wife, Martha, stood beside him, clutching her Bible to her chest like a shield. "Miss Jenkins," the Reverend said, his voice low but audible to those nearby. "Perhaps it would be best if you waited until after your situation has resolved itself before rejoining our congregation." Bethany felt the blood drain from her face. "This child is my late husband's, Reverend. I have every right to worship here." "Be that as it may," Martha Patterson interjected, "your presence is causing discomfort among the faithful. Think of the children and the example you're setting." Bethany's eyes stung with unshed tears as the crowd around them grew, people slowing their pace to witness her humiliation. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, as if to shield her unborn child from the cruelty of the world it would soon enter. Just as she was about to turn away, a tall figure stepped forward from the gathering crowd. Jack Zimmerman, the rancher who had moved to Willow Creek less than a year ago, approached with determined strides. His usual weathered Stetson was in his hand, his dark hair neatly combed for Sunday service. "Morning, Reverend," Jack said, his deep voice carrying across the sudden hush that had fallen over the churchgoers. "Miss Jenkins, would you do me the honor of sitting with me today?" Without waiting for her response, he offered his arm. Bethany hesitated for only a moment before placing her gloved hand on his forearm. The gesture was simple but spoke volumes. "Mr. Zimmerman," the Reverend began, "I was just explaining to Miss Jenkins that perhaps—" "I heard what you were explaining," Jack interrupted, his tone respectful but firm. "And I reckon Jesus himself would be mighty disappointed to hear one of his shepherds turning away a lamb, especially one in need of comfort." Martha Patterson's face flushed red. "Well, I never know, madam. I don't suppose you have," Jack replied, tipping his hat slightly. "Shall we, Miss Jenkins?" Together, they walked past the stunned Reverend and his wife, through the church doors and into the cool dimness of the sanctuary. Jack led Bethany to a pew near the middle, not hiding in the back but not confrontationally taking the front row either. As they sat, Bethany whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman, that was very kind." Jack placed his hat on the pew beside him. "Nothing kind about it, madam, just doing what's right." The service proceeded with an uncomfortable tension. Reverend Patterson's sermon on forgiveness rang hollow to many ears that morning, especially when he avoided looking in Bethany's direction. When the final hymn ended, Bethany braced herself for the gauntlet of whispers and stares she would face on her way out. Once again, Jack offered his arm. "Allow me to escort you home, Miss Jenkins." Outside, the May sunshine was bright, and the wildflowers along the path leading from the church were in full bloom. Several people nodded tentatively to Bethany, perhaps shamed by Jack's example into showing some basic courtesy. "You didn't have to do that," Bethany said once they were clear of the crowd. "Now they'll talk about you too," Jack chuckled. "Let them talk. My reputation can handle it. You're relatively new to town. You don't know how vicious the gossip can be. I've been here long enough to know that you're a fine teacher who lost her husband too soon. The rest is just noise." They walked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the chirping of birds and the distant laughter of children released from the constraints of church behavior. "How are you feeling?" Jack asked, nodding toward her belly. Bethany smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed that day. "Tired, nervous, excited, all at once." "When is the baby due?" "July, the doctor thinks, not long now." They reached the small house where Bethany lived, a modest cottage near the schoolhouse. Thank you again, Mr. Zimmerman. I won't forget your kindness today. Jack shifted his weight, suddenly seeming less sure of himself. Miss Jenkins, I don't mean to presume, but if you need any help preparing for the baby's arrival, I'd be happy to assist. I'm handy with tools could fix that loose porch rail for you, maybe build a cradle. Bethany studied him, trying to discern his motives. In her experience, few offers came without strings attached. Why would you do that? Because neighbors help neighbors, Miss Jenkins. No other reason needed, she nodded slowly. Then I accept your offer, Mr. Zimmerman. The porch rail has been worrying me. Jack, he said. Please call me Jack. Bethany, she replied with a small smile. He tipped his hat. I'll come by tomorrow after school lets out if that's agreeable. It is. Thank you. Jack, as he walked away, Bethany watched him go, puzzled by the strange feeling of lightness in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had simply been kind without wanting something in return. True to his word, Jack arrived the following afternoon just as Bethany was dismissing her students. He carried a wooden toolbox and wore a work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. Some of the children eyed him curiously as they filed past. A few of the older girls giggled behind their hands, clearly finding the tall rancher an interesting distraction from their usual routine. Miss Jenkins, he greeted her, hat in hand. Ready to tackle that porch rail, Bethany nodded, acutely aware of Mrs. Hallbrook across the street, watching with undisguised interest from her garden. Yes, thank you for coming. Jack worked efficiently, removing the loose rail and replacing it with sturdy new wood he had brought with him. Bethany brought him a glass of lemonade as he worked, grateful for his help but still uncertain about his intentions. You mentioned a cradle yesterday, she said hesitantly. I couldn't ask you to go to such trouble. Jack looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his brow. It's no trouble. I enjoy woodworking, keeps my hands busy during the winter months when ranch work slows down. Still, I should pay you for your time and materials. He shook his head firmly. I won't accept payment, Miss Bethany. Consider it a gift for the little one. Over the next few weeks, Jack became a regular visitor at Bethany's cottage. He built not only a beautiful pine cradle, but also repaired her leaky roof, oiled the squeaky hinges on her doors, and tended to a dozen other small tasks that had gone undone since Thomas's death. The town's attitude began to shift subtly. While some still whispered, others, seeing Jack's open support, began to soften toward Bethany. Mrs. Peterson, the baker's wife, stopped her in the street one day with a gift of freshly baked bread. Mr. Thornton, who owned the general store, started carrying her packages to her wagon without being asked. One evening in mid-June, as the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack sat on Bethany's porch, whittling a small wooden horse while she rocked in her chair. People are being kinder to me, Bethany observed. I have you to thank for that, Jack shrugged. People follow examples, good or bad. The Pattersons set a poor one, I tried to set a better one. Well, it worked. Even Martha Patterson nodded to me in town yesterday, Jack laughed. Imagine that. Next thing you know, the Reverend will be asking you to teach Sunday school. I wouldn't go that far, Bethany said, joining his laughter. It felt good to laugh again. In the months since Thomas's death, laughter had been scarce. May I ask you something personal? Jack said, his tone growing serious. Bethany tensed slightly but nodded. Your husband, what was he like? The question surprised her. Most people avoided mentioning Thomas as if his name might conjure uncomfortable truths. Thomas was dedicated to his work, to providing for us. He wasn't a demonstrative man, but he was steady. She paused, considering. We married young. I was 18, he was 22. It was a practical match more than a passionate one. Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. And he treated you well. Yes, Bethany said without hesitation. He was a good man, not perfect, but good. I'm glad to hear that, Jack said softly. You deserve goodness in your life. The sincerity in his voice made Bethany's heart beat faster. She changed the subject, uncomfortable with the emotions his words stirred. What about you? Have you ever been married? Jack returned his attention to the wooden horse. No, came close once, back in Kansas. Her name was Caroline. She decided a rancher's life was too hard, too isolated, married the banker's son instead. I'm sorry. Don't be, she was right, it is a hard life. And I wasn't ready then to be the man a woman needs. And now, the question slipped out before Bethany could stop it. Jack looked up, his eyes meeting hers. Now I know what matters, and it isn't how many cattle you run or how big your spread is, it's who you share the sunsets with. A flutter that had nothing to do with the baby moved through Bethany's chest. She stood awkwardly, one hand on her lower back. It's getting late, I should turn in. Jack immediately rose. Of course, you need your rest. He handed her the finished wooden horse. For the little one. Bethany took the toy, their fingers brushing momentarily. Thank you, it's beautiful. Good night, Bethany. Good night, Jack. As June turned to July, Bethany's time grew near. The summer heat was oppressive, making her swollen ankles and aching back even more uncomfortable. School was out for the season, which was a blessing she couldn't imagine standing before a classroom of children in her current state. Jack continued his visits, now bringing fresh vegetables from his garden and occasionally game he had hunted. The community had gradually accepted their friendship, though speculation about its nature never entirely ceased. On a particularly hot afternoon, Bethany was resting on her sofa when a sharp pain gripped her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. When the pain subsided, she tried to stand, only to feel a rush of fluid down her legs. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. The baby was coming, and she was alone. Dr. Wilson lived on the other side of town, at least a 20-minute walk in her normal condition impossible now. Just as panic began to set in, she heard the familiar sound of Jack's wagon approaching. She had never been so relieved to hear anything in her life. Bethany, Jack called as he knocked on the door. I brought some fresh corn and tomatoes. Jack, she called out, her voice strained. The baby, it's coming. The door flew open, and Jack stood there, his face momentarily frozen in shock before determination replaced it. All right, don't worry, I'll get the doctor. There's no time, Bethany said, another contraction making her gasp. It's happening too fast. Jack hesitated only briefly before taking charge. I've delivered foals and calves. Can't be that different, right? His attempt at humor fell flat, but his calm demeanor helped steady Bethany's nerves. I need clean towels, hot water, and whatever you've prepared for the baby, he said, helping her to the bedroom. The next few hours were a blur of pain and effort for Bethany. Jack remained by her side, his strong hand gripping hers through each contraction, his voice a steady anchor when the pain threatened to overwhelm her. You're the strongest woman I know, he told her as she pushed. You can do this, Bethany. Your little one is counting on you. Just as the sun was setting, with one final, powerful push, Bethany's daughter entered the world, announcing her arrival with a lusty cry that filled the small bedroom. A girl, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion as he wrapped the infant in a clean towel. A beautiful little girl. He placed the baby on Bethany's chest, and she looked down at her daughter's red, wrinkled face with a love so fierce it took her breath away. Hello, little one, she whispered. I've been waiting for you. When she looked up at Jack, she was surprised to see tears in his eyes. Thank you, she said. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come. He shook his head. You'd have managed. You're the strongest person I know, Bethany Jenkins. Dr. Wilson arrived an hour later, summoned by a neighbor Jack had sent for help. He examined both mother and baby, declaring them healthy but advising Bethany to rest as much as possible. You did well, Zimmerman, the doctor said as he packed up his bag. Ever consider a career in medicine? Jack laughed. Think I'll stick to ranching, Doc. This was a one-time performance. After the doctor left, Jack helped Bethany settle comfortably with the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully in her new cradle. What will you name her? He asked softly. Bethany touched her daughter's tiny hand. I was thinking Grace. Grace Thomas Jenkins. It's perfect. She looks like a Grace. Would you like to hold her? Jack's eyes widened. I don't know if I should. She's so small. You helped bring her into this world. I think you've earned the right to hold her. Carefully, as if handling the most precious thing in the world, Jack lifted Grace from her cradle. His large hands made the baby seem even tinier, but he held her with remarkable gentleness. Hello, Miss Grace, he whispered. Welcome to Willow Creek. As Bethany watched them, something shifted in her heart. The sight of this strong man cradling her newborn daughter with such tenderness awakened feelings she had kept carefully buried, since Thomas's death, perhaps even before. In the days that followed, Jack became an unexpected constant in their lives. He arranged for meals to be delivered, hired a young girl from town to help with household chores, and visited every evening to check on both Bethany and Grace. Word of his role in Grace's birth spread through town, further rehabilitating Bethany's reputation. The same women who had once shunned her now brought baby clothes and advice. Even Reverend Patterson made a stilted visit, offering belated congratulations and an awkward blessing for the child. One evening, about 2 weeks after Grace's birth, Jack arrived with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "A gift for Grace," he said, handing it to Bethany. She unwrapped it to find a silver locket on a delicate chain. "Jack, this is too much. Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny lock of Grace's dark hair that Bethany had cut the day before. She looked up at him in surprise. "How did you get this?" "Mrs. Evans gave it to me when she was here helping yesterday. I hope you don't mind. It's beautiful." Bethany blinked back tears. "Thank you." Jack seemed nervous, pacing the small sitting room instead of taking his usual chair. "Bethany, there's something I need to say." She waited, her heart suddenly pounding. "These past months, getting to know you, being part of your life, and now Grace's, it's meant more to me than I can express." He stopped pacing and faced her directly. "I find myself thinking about you all the time, about both of you." "Jack, please, let me finish. I know it might be too soon. I know you're still healing from losing Thomas, and I would never presume to replace him in your heart or in Grace's life." He took a deep breath. "But I love you, Bethany. I think I started falling in love with you that first day at church when you stood your ground with such dignity despite how they treated you." Bethany's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know how I feel." He moved toward the door. "I should go, let you rest." "Jack, wait." Bethany rose from her chair, Grace sleeping soundly in her arms. "I've been thinking about you too, about what you've come to mean to us." She took a step closer to him. "When Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over. I focused all my hopes on this baby, on being enough for her." She looked down at Grace's peaceful face. "Then you came along and showed me such kindness, such respect when I needed it most." "Anyone would have done the same," Jack said softly. "No, they wouldn't. You did, only you." Bethany met his gaze. "I'm not ready to say I love you not yet, but I think I could very easily if you're willing to be patient." The smile that broke across Jack's face was like the sun emerging from behind clouds. "Patience is a rancher's best virtue, Bethany. I've got plenty to spare." Gently, mindful of the baby between them, he leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. It was a promise, not a demand, and Bethany felt her heart swell with gratitude and hope. Summer gave way to fall, and fall to winter. Grace grew from a newborn to an alert, smiling infant who captured the hearts of everyone she met. Jack became a fixture in their lives, spending most evenings at Bethany's cottage and all of Sunday with them after church. The town's attitude had completely transformed. Where once there had been judgment and exclusion, now there was acceptance and even admiration for the young widow raising her child with such grace, and for the rancher who stood by them. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling gently outside and a fire crackling in the hearth, Jack arrived carrying more packages than usual. "Merry Christmas," he said, stamping snow from his boots before entering. "Santa came early for Miss Grace." Bethany laughed as he placed the gifts under the small pine tree he had cut and brought for them the week before. "You're spoiling her." "That's my job," he replied with a grin, lifting Grace from her blanket on the floor. At 5 months, she recognized him immediately, reaching for his beard with chubby fingers and gurgling happily. After they had exchanged gifts, a hand-knitted scarf from Bethany for Jack, a beautiful shawl from Jack for Bethany, and far too many toys for Grace, they sat before the fire, Grace dozing in Jack's arms. "There's one more gift," Jack said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "But I'm not sure if it's the right time." Bethany set down her cup of mulled cider. "What is it?" Jack carefully transferred Grace to her cradle before returning to kneel in front of Bethany's chair. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. "Bethany Jenkins, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Watching you with Grace, seeing your strength and your kindness, has only made me love you more each day." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small diamond. "I want to build a life with you and Grace. I want to be a father to her and a husband to you, if you'll have me." Tears spilled down Bethany's cheeks. "Are you sure, Jack? Taking on another man's child, a ready-made family, I've never been more sure of anything," he interrupted. "Grace isn't another man's child to me. She's yours, and that makes her precious to me. And you, Bethany, you're the love I never expected to find." Bethany slid from her chair to kneel with him on the hearth rug. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, Jack Zimmerman." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home. They were married on a bright January day in 1877, with Grace cooing in Mrs. Evans's arms and the entire town of Willow Creek in attendance. Even Reverend Patterson seemed genuinely pleased as he pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride," he said, and Jack did so with a tenderness that brought tears to many eyes. As they walked out of the church into the winter sunshine, Jack offered Bethany his arm, just as he had done that fateful Sunday 8 months before. "Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Zimmerman?" he asked. Bethany smiled up at him, her heart full. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." Spring brought new beginnings. Jack's ranch flourished, and their small family settled into a rhythm of work and love and laughter. Grace took her first steps in the garden Bethany had planted, toddling uncertainly between her mother and the man she now called Papa, with perfect clarity. And when summer came again, bringing with it the anniversary of that day at the church door, Bethany discovered she was expecting once more this time, a child created in love and welcomed with joy by both its parents. "Life has a funny way of coming full circle," Bethany said as they sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset. Grace played at their feet, her dark curls bouncing as she stacked wooden blocks Jack had carved for her. "How do you mean?" Jack asked, his hand resting protectively on Bethany's still flat stomach. "A year ago, I was alone and afraid, shunned by people I thought were friends. Now look at us." She gestured to their home, to Grace, to the life they had built together. Jack leaned over to kiss her softly. "I thank God every day for giving me the courage to offer you my arm that Sunday. Best decision I ever made. Even better than asking me to marry you," Bethany teased. "Well, that was just the natural next step. The journey started the moment I saw you standing tall despite their judgment, protecting your baby with all the fierceness of a mother bear." He smiled. "I think I fell in love with your courage before I even knew your name." As darkness fell over the Colorado wilderness, stars appearing one by one in the vast sky above, Bethany rested her head on her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that sometimes the greatest loves grow from the smallest acts of kindness, like a cowboy offering his arm to a woman in need and walking beside her through whatever came next.